conversation, though, is with Kile Jones, so famous he goes by the B. We're doing that now. So this is Kile Jones. I mentioned to you already that Kyle is a good friend. Kyle is coordinating a national conversation around the country for people who are wanting to have conversations in churches with atheists called Interview an Atheist at Church Day,
yes.
Which is totally awesome. And I want to start by asking Kyle, why do you think it's necessary to have hey church people interview an atheist at Church Day?
Because we stereotype each other. Because we see a certain character of what we think a Christian is, and we apply that to all types of Christians with broad strokes. Same thing with atheists. We have this idea of what an atheist is, and I wanted to counteract
godless communist. That kind of
godless
thing.
communist. We have no morals. We're not trusted. We don't raise our children well.
Yeah.
We are anarchists. We are the Antichrist, you know, and it's simply not the case.
Yeah.
So counteract those false and negative stereotypes.
And so for a couple of years, you having been in religious life yourself, and then seeing that churches and atheist communities don't connect, you started saying, hey, maybe if we formalize something, people could dig into this. How has that gone?
It's gone really well. It's amazing when some of my atheist friends will watch some of these videos, some of these interviews, and they'll go, "How did it turn out so well? I was waiting for the fight. Yeah, I was waiting for you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, waiting for those moments where the tension's going to be real high, where they're going to start mud wrestling. I don't know why I went to mud wrestling.
Yeah.
But mud wrestling, I just
You're classy
imagining
like that,
us
yeah.
mud wrestling, right? That's a horrible image.
Because your other entertainment patterns were...
Yeah, so they go to me, oh my God, I can't believe it went that well. Or, right? And so what you do is it humanizes the other person. It does all kinds of positive work that we can find ways to coexist and work together.
Now I'll tell you, for the last, I don't know what it's been, 2.5 years or so that we've been talking about this, and we did this 2 years ago with the help of August. We got folks in the Minnesota Atheist Association to come. When I talk to pastors about doing this and try to recruit the people, you know, in my sphere of influence, very often, even highly progressively minded and inter-religiously oriented people, once you bring up atheists, like interview an atheist as opposed to a rabbi or an imam or interview an atheist, the tenor changes. Like religious people, especially officially inside of a religious church gathering or church service or, you know, the official Sunday thing, get seriously nervous about that. And I've even noticed that when I say to people like, and this was the genius I think of your marketing on this, when I say, hey, at Solomons Porch, in a couple weeks we're going to do an interview an atheist at Church Day, people go, really? Like it perks up their interest. Yeah, right. So that says something, doesn't it? That there's sort of a culture in the air that somehow it's a super big deal, and it kind of is. I mean, it's like we have a day where we do that, you know.
Well, I think it's something out of the ordinary. Right? And some pastors are worried about it because they assume either A, the atheist is going to come and try to deconvert everybody, or the atheists get worried because they think they're going to go to a church and then the whole church is going to try to convert them.
Yeah.
And there is actually a way to live life where we're not always trying to make others like ourselves. It is possible to accept your identity as a Christian and mine as an atheist, and then find ways to live together. I mean, that is possible.
And how long have you been comfortable publicly identifying your atheist?
Probably 7 years, something like that.
You came out of a religious experience, like you were religiously engaged.
Yes.
Was that a hard thing when you started talking about being an atheist?
Yeah, especially given that my whole social environment was Christians, Christians, and more conservative Christians. yeah, they were worried for me, right? They were worried for my soul. They thought I was backslidden. They thought I was going to end up being this horrible person. They felt like I was losing my mind or something. And not all of them acted in shady ways. Some of them were very supportive. Like, hey, just go where you think you need to go. Be who you think you need to be, and that's okay. I'll still love you. But some people were like, don't talk to that guy. He's going to infect you.
Like, so there was a moment where you were comfortable saying, now I don't organize my thoughts around there being around God.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, just whatever part of that process or journey for you is.
Yeah, it changes a lot of the way you view the world, right? You don't, as an atheist, there's no God that kind of wraps things together, right? Puts a package on this chaotic experience of life. That there's no golden thread, that silver lining, that meta-narrative, the overarching purpose and meaning for the cosmos. You're kind of spinning on this celestial spaceship as stardust, trying to figure out the best way to navigate your life and be a decent person. And so you have a different view, like nobody's out there watching over me. That the only meaning that is going to exist in the world is the meaning that we create. The only significance is going to be the significance that we create. So it places a lot of the onus or the burden then on you, and you can react to this in one of two ways. You can have despair, like the movie we were watching last night, Sunset.
Toy Story.
Oh yeah, Toy Story. He's driven to this Jean-Paul Sartrean Nietzschean despair.
Yeah.
Forget why this is all meaningless. It's hopeless. It's futile. What? You can go that way, yeah. But then a more common response is to go, okay, wait a second. So now my life is in my hands. That I need to find ways to create meaning and create the world as I want it. I mean, no one else is going to do this for me. So it's a liberating thing, and it can be frightening too.
When you first moved out of your religious orientation into your atheist understanding, how much of that did you know? Like, was that a scary move? Like, a lot of people who go through a conversion or a flip, as I like to call it, experience something where it's like when you watch a trapeze person go from one bar to the next and they're swinging and they let go of this one.
Yeah.
That some people call it that liminal space, that space in between.
Yeah.
Like for you, was that a big distance to go through, or was it a pretty? Did you sort of like the kids who do the monkey bars and they let go and grab on, and some kids sort of go hand by hand? Did you get to go hand by hand, or did you have that moment where you were like, this is a really scary moment for me in my life? And,
probably both. I wouldn't really know. I mean, sometimes it felt as if I was swirling in an atomic abyss, trying to navigate and orient myself. But a lot of that has to do with issues of identity. Right? I was losing my community. I was losing a lot of my friends. My identity was ruptured and in transition. And but other times it was quite natural. Like sometimes the fall from grace lands you on a fluffy pillow. Sometimes the fall from grace lands you on a rock. It's both. I do like fluffy pillows though, so I prefer to land on some down or something.
yeah. Or at least a goose.
Some goose. Is that goose full of down?
No, it's not full of down.
He didn't really care that much then, did he?
No, it's more of a representation than actually. When you were in that new space, we've talked about this a bit, like people who have the zeal of the newly converted, there can be the zeal of the newly unconverted, where that thing that became liberating for you that caused a change in you becomes sort of an issue of urgency for others, in your view of others. How did that go for you? Like, were you one of those aggressive atheists on the move, stopping other people from believing things? And
I probably I was hurt, I was traumatized. I was ostracized, shunned. I don't know how else to put it.
It's like
I think you get the idea.
As you started saying to people, I don't think and we should back the story up a little bit. You went to a graduate school to study theology.
Yes.
As a religious person, and
yes.
in that work and that process is when a lot of other things happened with you. So you were like really surrounded by religious people and
yes.
thinkers on the whole variety of the spectrum.
And I was a youth pastor. I was really involved in ministry.
Yeah. How long did you feel like you were an atheist before you told people? How long were you closeted?
I was never closeted. Right?
Like the first day that you were like, I'm pretty sure you were just like to the kids and the parents and the senior pastor, and you're like, hey, I've been thinking, maybe it's
secretly taking the kids and like.
Yeah, like how long was that process? You know what I'm saying?
The
like
kids' version of like the God delusion.
Yeah.
No. I wasn't corrupting the youth.
Is there a kid's version of the God delusion? That's the fear.
I wasn't corrupting the youth of Athens. Yeah. But no, when my doubts started coming to the front, right? When they started becoming unreconcilable, when the cognitive dissonance was too much for me to bear, I am a very social person. I talk too much, and I'm an extrovert. So of course I'm chilling with my friends, my family. Well, wait a second. How does the two natures of Christ work? Like, can we go through the hypostatic union precisely here, please? Help me with the Trinity. I don't know the Trinity. All of these different things, right? Textual issues, historical issues, all kinds of stuff. Issues with science and evolution, tons of stuff. I would say something. I would say it. And lots of my friends are closeted on Facebook, for instance.
Yeah.
They'll make sure to message me and be like, by the way, don't tag me.
Yeah.
La 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 la, look at this atheist.
Yeah.
Because he has family that he has to deal with. And I can sympathize with that, but that's not my MO. I'll just tell you straight up.
Yeah. So a lot of people I know, and people in this community for sure, are in mixed marriages where there's Christians and non-theists and atheists, and some of them atheists that are in their lives. And sometimes those issues become conflated, like what's our particular family relationship versus like how do people who are in relationships with someone whose belief structure is so different than their own. Do you have any thoughts, sort of generally speaking, about how inside of intimate friendships or marriages or other relationships that you can maintain some practices, right? I'm getting at.
As a Christian atheist matchmaker, I should be an expert
Yes.
on this. And that's basically what I do. I match up atheists and Christians. I mean, not romantically, but I can do that if you want. I know some really sweet atheists. Come on.
There's some atheist guys looking for some girls somewhere.
I think it's like a dating site, atheist seeking Christian woman.
Yeah.
It's
like you can keep the Star Trek references to a minimum on the first 10 dates.
Exactly. You know what? I love Star Trek, and I'm really offended by you saying that.
Star Trek?
Yeah. So,
but you happen to be into it? Well, that's unusual.
Yeah, there's no correlation at all.
No correlation. That's not a thing.
No. Spock is not our ideal human. He's not even a human. Ideal person. So, that's just really bad, isn't it? Thank you. There are certain things, right? And I am certainly not in a position to give people relationship advice. If I give you any, certainly don't take it. But my general gist of things is, as a person, atheist that works with Christians and other religious persons, is to try to find those common denominators, try to find those commonalities, those things that we all share as humans, right? Like our cares, our concerns, our worries, our fears, our hopes, all this stuff. You can be an atheist, a Jew, Buddhist, anything. You're still going to have those because you're a Homo sapiens, right? And so finding those commonalities and then treating each other with a certain grace or compassion, right? Like being willing to accept the other as they are, and not have them have to comport to what you want them to be. Now in relationships, that's extremely difficult. So hats off to you if you're in a atheist Christian relationship. That's great. I hope it works.
Yeah.
I can see where that would be tough.
Yeah. We're going to switch stools just so that, because as we look at each other, people get to see your face on the other side of the room.
But my complexion.
I've mentioned to you a couple of times over the last couple of days that I think there's some different categories of being atheist. Like I think there's non-theists versus an atheist. You've mentioned humanists as a different category. As you think about the atheists that you engage with and that you're involved with nationally and so on, like in the religious world, it's pretty common for people to be able to say, look, there's a lot of different kinds of religious people. Like there's the big religion categories, and then inside those, inside of Islam, there's different expressions of Islam, inside of Christianity, inside of Judaism.
Sure.
We tend to see the other that we don't know very well in sort of a block. Mm-hmm. And what should those of us who don't span the whole range of atheists know about the richness of atheist communities, so that when people use shorthand, like, oh, I'm an atheist, like if someone says, oh, I'm a Christian, it's kind of good to know, like, oh, that could be anywhere from like conservative Catholic to, very contemporary evangelical, right? And all sort of, all in between.
When someone says they're Christian in Minnesota, I just assume Lutheran.
Yeah.
But
when people say atheist, we tend to see a block.
Yeah.
What should we know, those of us who don't traffic in your field, about that category?
Well, I would assume, first of all, that lots of people don't recognize that there's actually quite a plethora and diversity within the non-believing community. So we try to hash out all these labels, like what exactly does it mean to be a humanist? What does it mean to be an agnostic versus an atheist, positive versus negative atheist, all these different things.
You guys talk about that, or sociologists talk about that?
No,
like,
just people.
Like when you're in an atheist get-together with friends, do you use those sort of defining terms?
Yeah, we wonder how we identify and connect with these labels.
Yeah.
What exactly does it mean to be a humanist?
Nice.
What exactly does it mean? What does atheist mean other than not believing in God?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people assume that it entails all these other things. I mean, and it does. Because atheism, as the literal word, is just atheist, it's just no God, right? But atheism as a movement, as a cultural, social thing, has a whole host of factors involved with it. Usually people that are involved in the atheist community are secularists, right? They believe in a strict separation of church and state, or even trying to get religion out of politics. They vote in similar ways, or they're generally socially liberal. They follow certain patterns. But there's so many different types of atheists. There's Robert Price, who's this Republican conservative atheist, right? Now he's few and far between. I think 1 in 10 atheists are conservative. But there's a lot of different views, right? There's these humanists, there's people who are agnostic, who are just like, well, I don't know if God exists or not, I wouldn't identify as an atheist. So there's a lot more than just that is what the atheist is. There are atheists who are sweet, loving, cordial people, and then there are the grumpy atheists. It's just they're people. I mean, like the grumpy, I know there's a couple grumpy Christians in here, I'll find them. Right there. And then there's the sweet, and then there's the yoga one, and the Orthodox one, like Coptic Orthodox doesn't mean, you guys are all heretics anyway, but, right, they're people.
Yeah.
I think when we put a primacy on labels, it can, and I'm all for labels, I think there are ways we navigate the world and they're important, but you're not just a Christian, Doug. Duke. She said I could call you Duke.
Well, that requires certain kind of relational. We'll see you later.
All right.
No, I didn't call me Duke.
No, but you're more than a Christian.
Yeah.
You're a human being. You have I think you have emotions. You're more than just that label.
Yeah.
So I think if we can try to look past that, then you can find a richness in their experiences and their all of that. So I would say for atheists, we're not all these nasty grumpy. Have you ever seen House? The show House?
Yes.
Don't get me wrong, I love Greg Laurie or Hugh Laurie. Greg Laurie's in Calvary Chapel, like big Billy Graham person. They're very different, but and I love his character and everything. But not all atheists are like these grumpy, steamrolling, strictly logical Vulcans.
Yeah.
Some of them are teddy bears, right? So we're not all that way.
What should we know as if somebody categorizes themselves as a religious person that we wouldn't understand as being really offensive to atheists? Like how are
Asking us
Christians-
how we can be decent people without believing in God.
Like how do you have morals and live ethically if you don't
Yeah,
believe
there's
in God?
one sense in which when you ask that question to an atheist, it's okay, so I get asked this, what sort of questions are commonly brought up in these interviews?
Yeah.
There's always three. Three that run through all of them.
Uh-huh.
And one of them is, where do they get meaning from? Like, how is the world meaningful to them, all that. One of them is morality. Where do you get morality from? And the other one is, where does the world come from? Like biogenesis and the Big Bang, cosmology, all that stuff, right? So those three always get asked. And rightly so, I understand asking them philosophically, like, explain to me where your system of ethics comes from, or where do you think the world comes from. That makes sense, but sometimes it's put in a way that sounds like, how?
It assumes you don't have any of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
things.
how could you, if you're a Christian, so how are you not killing people?
Yeah.
Right? It's,
Yeah.
well, what do you mean? I'm not a murderer. I don't do that. So it assumes that you need to believe in God or have this conception of God to be a decent person, which is simply not the case. So I'd be careful with how you phrase the moral question. So that's one.
What gift do you think atheists can offer to religious communities that, if they were open to greater participation of atheists in, around, through, next to, whatever community comfortable with? Like, is there something?
They're treating people that have questions, that have doubts, that struggle with certain issues, treating them with compassion. That it's okay, that it's all right if you're struggling with certain ideas, right? That's okay. Also an outside perspective, like I forget who was saying it the other day. I think it was Victoria. Like, you know, a fish in the ocean, it's like, oh, the water's just there. You need someone standing outside the fish tank, like, avoid that rock. It's, you know, there's really a crab hiding behind there, right? So, an outside perspective. Yeah. And that there's a bunch of us out there, you know? We are legion.
When you were a religiously orienting person, how did you think about atheists?
Very negatively.
You did.
Yeah, oh yeah. How could they be good or decent people if they didn't believe in God?
Those are your very
Don't be
No
like
wonder
the
that
old Kyle.
insults you,
Don't
yeah.
be like the old Kyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the Rob Lowe commercials. Don't be like this Rob Lowe.
Exactly. My old self insults me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So you thought down on them. Was that
Sure.
then a hard thing when you started?
Interesting twist of fate, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. It shows like who you ostracize, who you other. Be careful when you do that because you might just end up being them.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to offend you, but it's very the Apostle Paul story, the Christian narrative. Right?
I'm super
the greatest persecutor of Christianity in the story.
Saul to Paul.
Saul becomes the greatest convert. That's
Yeah.
part of the human process. Sometimes those things that are most offensive to us or difficult for us to handle might be the seedlings of something that's, you know, I mean, it's probably.
And
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to open it up for other
Open it
thoughts
up.
and comments.
It's all
and
you.
questions. Anybody welcome to ask Kyle or me or anybody else anything you want, or make any comment you want. They don't have to just be questions; they can be comments.
Most of my friends are atheists, and I've always been Christian, and I've never thought that way about atheists. I think this is a really inclusive community. So, what can atheism give to us if we already know we're not monsters? You know, like what else is there
other than that, obviously, the humanizing of atheists is to encourage Christians and inclusive or progressive Christians to team up, to find ways of working together. Because it's more than just we don't kill each other. We can do good things together as well. So I would probably say that is like the next step.
August, do you want to mention anything about, August Berkshire's here and he works, helps coordinate things for Minnesota Atheists, and there's some information out there. And August, you work really hard to help people access atheism, atheist communities in a safe way. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, I'm a former president of Minnesota Atheists. I'm still on the board. I have a bunch of pamphlets in there if you want to learn more about the atheist perspective and our worldview. I was just speaking at Oxio High School this past Wednesday to a world religions class where they had outside speakers, different ones on different days. So they might have a Buddhist one day and then a Jew another day. So it is trying to educate